Hello and welcome to CU TV. We're joined here today by Laura Bates to talk about her new book, Girl Up, which came out in April 2016. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that I really enjoyed reading your book.
Thank you.
And you mentioned in it that you've been on a couple of school visits in the UK.
Yes.
And a lot of the things you mentioned to do with body policing, sexism, body image issues are ones that sounded very familiar to me, and I haven't been at school for several years now. So I was wondering how much you think things are improving in schools and what are the biggest problems that are still facing young women today?
I think things are improving in some ways, mostly I think because of young women and student activists themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of amazing and inspiring young women at university and girls at school who are fighting back, setting up feminist societies, protesting against sexist school dress codes, really kind of taking the fight to the problem. And I think that's incredibly encouraging to see. But in terms of what they're up against, I think the problem is still huge, both anecdotally from the huge number of girls I speak to who are experiencing everything from sexism within the curriculum that they're taught, to street harassment on their way to school, to sexist comments and even sexual assault at school, so that kind of level of anecdotal stuff. But also, if we look at the statistics, there's very recent Freedom of Information requests which found that there have been 5,500 sexual offences, including 600 rapes reported to the police as having occurred at UK schools over a 3-year period, which works out to almost exactly 1 rape per school day of term being reported to the police. And we all know how few things get reported to the police. So I think we have to recognise there's a real problem with sexual violence, not only on university campuses, but even in schools as well.
For those young women in schools now, more so than ever before, there are a lot of high-profile celebrities like Beyonce or Emma Watson, Taylor Swift. They've all come out as kind of saying, you know, I am a feminist in the last couple of years. And some people have seen this as a really positive thing, but others have seen it as a little bit superficial maybe. So I was wondering, what was your opinion on that? Do you think it's maybe distracting to the movement, or do you think it's kind of a positive step forward?
Well, I think, and I hope that it's a gateway, you know, because I think actually the more people calling themselves feminists, the better. That has to be a great thing. And it means that there are young women all over the world being introduced to these concepts who might not have heard about it elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that they then go and listen to Beyonce or Emma Watson or Taylor Swift's ideas about feminism and stop there. Hopefully it means that it introduces them to the whole world of feminism, and then they go and find out more and learn more and become galvanised, and I think that that's a positive.
Okay. So in your book you touch on the ways in which feminism can be for men too, and how the patriarchy can heap expectations on men as well as women. This is quite a contentious issue about the place of men in feminism, and I was wondering what kind of role you think men should be playing both in debate and in real life.
Well, first of all, I think it's really important that we can acknowledge the negative impact that the patriarchy has on men and boys. So, for example, gender stereotyping, which suggests that boys don't cry, men are strong, that men don't talk about their emotions, and the fact that we have real issues around male mental health and the male suicide rate. I think we can acknowledge those kinds of issues and still acknowledge the wider structural problems that mean that sexism, gender inequality, sexual violence vastly disproportionately impact on women, that this is a gendered issue. So to acknowledge male victims of sexual violence and those kinds of issues is important, and it also doesn't mean that we can't still say that structurally this isn't a genderless issue. It's very gendered. And in terms of what role men have to play in feminism, I think that we need everybody on board to change this, because what we're talking about is shifting social and cultural norms, normalised attitudes and behaviours towards women. Everyone has a role to play in changing that. It's not even necessarily about confronting the person that's sexually assaulting a woman on the bus. It certainly shouldn't be about saying how that woman should react, but what I'm very interested in is, what about the 10 people sitting around who witness it and at the moment look out of the window and suggest this is normal, carry on. I feel like there's a real role for every one of us to play there, but particularly for men to play in disrupting that normalisation. But I don't think that necessarily means that it's feminism's job to be focusing all of its energies on trying to make itself palatable to men, welcoming men and making space for men. there's a really brilliant quote by a feminist activist called Kelly Temple, who used to be NUS women's officer, and she once said, you know, when everyone's asking us, why don't we make space in feminism for men, she said, we need men to be taking the space they already have in the world and making it feminist. I thought that was fantastic.
And obviously you graduated from Cambridge a few years ago, and a lot of people here still feel that with, you know, drinking societies and socially and academically as well, there's still a bit of a way to go with problems with sexism. So I was wondering, what was your experience like when you were here with that kind of thing?
I think there's definitely still a long way to go. Because I think it's important for me to say that I can't compare Cambridge with other universities. So I think from the experiences I have now and the research I'm doing now, I'm hearing from young women all over the country suggesting that this really is a very universal problem. I don't think there's a university campus in the country where sexual violence, sexual harassment, other forms of hate crime, racism and homophobia aren't massive problems. But yes, it's definitely something. Interestingly, it's something that I was more aware of when I started looking back, because when I was in Cambridge, I wasn't hugely involved in feminism and the feminist movement. And a lot of what I dealt with, I think I just accepted as normal. I thought I had to put up with. And it was only looking back that I thought about the boyfriend who came home from the end of year hockey dinner with the trophy that was the under the thumb award for the boyfriend who spent, the player who spent too much time with his girlfriend, or, you know, remembered experiences of being lined up like cattle and inspected by boys on hall swaps, or I think as anywhere else, a lot of the things that we experience at university we sort of think we have to put up with because they're normal. And I talk to so many young women at university now who talk about being groped and touched and sexually assaulted in nightclubs or while they're out dancing. They wouldn't use those words to describe it because we're bringing girls up, teaching them just put up with this is normal.
And finally, a lot of the stuff you do is on the internet, obviously the Everyday Sexism Project, and you write for The Guardian. And being a woman on the internet is obviously, as a lot of people know, can be a very dangerous thing. So firstly, what's your kind of experience with that? And what would you say to any young women who were kind of hoping to start similar movements or hoping to kind of join in with this stuff on the internet?
Well, I have had a lot of difficult experiences with that. So I receive hundreds of rape threats and death threats, which are very graphic and detailed. Sometimes I think people don't recognise how bad it is actually. When you hear particularly white men say, well, if you don't like being disagreed with, don't be on the internet. And actually you're talking about long emails where someone details their fantasy of raping you and what weapons, 7 knives, different knives they'd use to disembowel you with and what order they do it. You know, it's very different from someone disagreeing with you online. I think what I would say to young women is, you know, try not to be put off. Hopefully not everybody will have this experience, but there is an awful lot that you can do to put in place before you start a campaign, which I wish I'd known at the beginning. So things like doing a My Reputation or a Pipple search to make sure that none of your personal details are available online so that doxing isn't an issue. Changing all your passwords to different ones so that if you were to be hacked on a particular account, it wouldn't give people access to anything else. Putting on 2-step verification, changing the privacy settings on all of your photographs. There's quite a few things now and some really good guides online to help you with it. But I'd also say that if it happens, it's not your fault and there's no right or wrong response to it, in just the same way that there isn't to harassment or violence in real life. If someone threatens to rape you or kill you online, it's illegal just as it would be in real life, and you have the right to report it to the police and expect it to be dealt with. And then if you experience it, don't listen to people who tell you don't feed the trolls or you have to do this or that. Actually just do whatever feels right to you to get through it, because ultimately it doesn't matter how you deal with it, it shouldn't be happening to you in the first place.
Okay, fantastic. I think that was everything. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's been really nice.
Yeah, so nice to meet you.